Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Comic Source Comic Boom collaboration. This is your DC Spotlight for books dropping on June 15th, 2021. Kind of a smaller week, which is good.
Finally? Yes.
Yeah, I think last week we didn't even get a chance to talk about the DC Pride book because it was such a huge episode, issue all to itself, and we'd already gone over 2.5 hours. So don't worry, we are going to do a special spotlight just on the DC Pride. Probably be out maybe Wednesday or Thursday of this week. So keep your eyes out for that. Also, similarly, at some point, Rocky and I will probably get together and talk about Far Sector as a whole series as well, because we didn't talk about the end of that series because I think we're both behind on it. But I do want to talk about it because Joel Mullen is very much going to be a big part of DC going forward, Infinite Frontier. She's already a big part of Jeffrey Thorne's Green Lantern book. I think she's supposed to be in the Green Lantern cartoon that's coming up. So they're definitely raising her profile. So I want to read Far Sector beyond the first 3 issues, which is all I've read. So I'll sit down, I'll read it all in one sitting, and then Rocky and I will probably talk about it. So beyond that, I mean, I don't really know that there's any kind of general news going on. It seems like DC has sort of righted the ship. We've talked about it over the course of the past few weeks how we don't have sales numbers, unfortunately, so we can't really put any sort of hard concrete facts on it. But just based on what I see on social media and people talking, and what I hear from retailers, it seems like the low point of Future State has passed. However, I will say that a lot of these books are still heading toward that possible future of Future State. So you kind of wonder, is DC playing chicken? Are they going to veer off at the last second? Specifically, I guess we'll talk about it a little bit when we get to Catwoman this week, which was pretty solid. But anyway, let's go ahead and dive into the books. Because, I thought it was a pretty good week. There's a couple pretty good number ones here, Rocky. I don't know what and a big spoiler in Nightwing. I'll warn everybody right now. And it's one of those things, we got these books like a while early. Most of the time we get the books on at least by the Friday before they're released, barring any technical difficulties like we had a couple weeks ago. But sometimes we get them, well in advance. And this is one of those situations, and it's kind of tough because there are certain people that get the preview copies that don't necessarily think about the fact that we don't want these things spoiled. Everything's supposed to be embargoed, but if you turn around and send, and I'll specifically call them out because they're the ones that ruin everything, I feel like. Bleeding Cool, right? If you read something in a comic that you got, 2 weeks before street date, and you send Rich Johnson an email at Bleeding Cool and go, hey, guess what DC's doing? They don't care. They're going to put it right out on their web. Now, they don't get preview copies. DC's not stupid enough to give Rich Johnson or anybody at Bleeding Cool preview copies because they spoil things and they don't care. They're just about getting clicks for their website. So I even saw Tom Taylor on, I think last Thursday, was already saying something like, man, it really sucks when you build up to something, and he hasn't been on the book that long, but it really sucks when you build up to something and you want it to have a big impact in the book, and it gets spoiled for people before they even have a chance to read it, right? Like, we all understand the risks if you're on social media or you're on a certain corner of the internet and you haven't read something that's already been released, right? Like if you don't go see a movie on the opening weekend and you're cruising, the internet on the following Wednesday, if something gets spoiled for you, yeah, it sucks, but you took the chance because you were out there on the internet and you didn't go see it as soon as you could. That's not the case here, right? Nightwing, as much as people want to read it the first day, it hasn't even been released yet. These are just preview copies where people have read what's happening and they've reached out, and Bleeding Cool's already written an article about it nearly a week before the book comes out.
It's kind of a bro code you got to follow there in terms of spoilers. And I'd be lying if every now and then I don't slip up myself back in the day when I would get review copies, and I always feel bad when I screw up, and but I generally don't do it intentionally, and we always try to give spoiler warnings, so it is what it is. But it's in this day and age, it's kind of hard to avoid at times, and but I think for the most part, I think most of us try to adhere to the sort of like we don't release these things you know, until midnight on the Tuesday or the Wednesday, whatever the case might be. So,
Yeah, and the fact is that everybody who watches this show or listens to the podcast knows on our DC spotlights, we do spoilers.
yeah.
So if you choose to listen to it or watch it before you've read the books, hey, that's on you, right? Like we
Yeah.
we we tried to do it on Friday.
Surprise.
We tried to do it on the Friday, and you all reached out and said no, we want it on Tuesday. We're happy to do that. We're happy to put it out on the day it comes out and talk in depth on these stories. We love DC Comics. We love hearing from what all you guys think. But again, that's different. We adhere to it, to that embargo date, of not releasing it until the day the book is in comic shops. But unfortunately, it only takes one person. It only takes one person to reach out to Rich Johnston or put it out on social media to kind of ruin things, and it's disappointing. And the other thing it does is it drives the speculators crazy, and like it wasn't like Nightwing number 78 was like a cheap. It would already was going for over cover on eBay, but if you go look there right now,
Yeah.
prices are through the roof. Because I was curious about it. So anyway, we'll get to Nightwing in a minute. We're actually going to talk about Flash number 771 first. So this is written by Jeremy Adams, and it's the blink of an eye, chapter 4. Wally West has been jumping through the Speed Force because of this surge of the Speed Force, where Wally's been jumping into various speedsters. So what's cool is we have a ton of artists here, and each of them depicts a different era. Right, so Brandon Peterson handles the art when we're in present time with Oliver Queen and Barry Allen and Mr. Terrific. But when you're talking about and what we find out here is that Wally's not only jumping through different time eras, but he's jumping through kind of different omniverse versions of the DC universe. And so really the sky's the limit. And we even get at the beginning, which we got teased at the end of last issue, the omniverse version of Challenge of the Super Friends, right? Which was one of my favorite cartoons growing
It's
up.
awesome. It was awesome.
Yeah, just used with the Legion of Doom. And it was amazing. I love that cartoon. I have the intro with the guy talking with the super deep voice. I have that on my phone as like a ringtone, and yeah, it was huge. Anyway, Kevin McGuire draws that one. We have Howard Porter drawing a different era. Barat, I'm probably mispronouncing this, but Barat Pegmizki draws another sequence. Brian Hitch does one. Max Rayner does one. Scott Collins does one. Tom Derenick, Fernando Passerin, and Eau Claire Albert. So a ton of artists working on this book, all drawing different eras as Wally's hopping around. And we talked about it before, leaping around from place to place, hoping each time the next leap will be the leap home, if that sounds familiar to any of you.
Yeah.
Michael Atea does the colors, and Steve Wands does the letters. So, yeah, I thought this was a really great issue. I do still have kind of the little weird thing about Brandon Peterson's art, about why he outlines all his characters in a color. I still don't understand that. But I thought the rest of the issue was great. What's interesting, Jeremy Adams throughout the story does a really good job of giving each of these eras a distinctive voice. Like these characters do very much sound like their counterparts from the Challenge of the Super Friends, especially Luther. And when the Scarecrow talks, his S's are very drawn out, which is very much just how it was in the cartoon. A couple of the sequences, like the Old West, it's literally one panel with Max Mercury. And then there's another one at Titans Academy, which, that's great that they're tying it into, other stories that are going on around. Even if it is just one panel, we get one where he jumps into the body of Liberty Bell and he's looking, when this is the one that Brian Hitch draws. And when he sees himself, he's male, But I wonder, is that as how he sees himself as everybody else? So going back to the whole quantum leap thing,
Yeah, I was a
when
little confused by that, to be honest, because if he's
yeah,
jumping into her body, he shouldn't look like himself. So I don't get that.
yeah, but it may be that he's only perceiving him as himself, or it's just to let us know. Because just like in Quantum Leap, whenever Scott Bakula would look in the mirror, he would see whoever body he was in. But when we were looking at him on the screen, he looked like Scott Bakula. So it might be something
Yeah,
similar.
maybe.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah. And then the next one, I wasn't real sure who that. I do remember that little wizard from some era of the Flash, but I wasn't 100% sure. Um,
Yeah.
but when they get to the future, when they get to San Francisco with Jay and with Iris, the twins, while he's in the future, he's jumped into the body of his son. It's a very heartfelt moment that the father and daughter share. And I thought it was great. I thought it really leaned in. Jeremy Adams is really leaning into what makes Wally West so beloved and why so many people feel that he's their Flash, because he really has become kind of the emotional center of the Flash family, and really you could make the argument he's the emotional center of the DC universe, which is why when Rebirth happened and Wally West returned, that DC Rebirth special that Jeff Johns wrote, there were people talking about literally being in tears reading it. I got a little choked up. I don't know that I teared up necessarily, but it was a pretty emotionally impactful moment. And so we get that here with Wally talking to his daughter. She's all grown up. He gets the glimpse, and what a cool thing! Like, I'd love to get a glimpse at what my daughter would be like in life would be like in 20 years from now. Just so in case anything was wrong, I could try to fix it now, or maybe even appreciate more, the time that I have with her now. But at the end, there's a really interesting place where Wally ends up. He jumps back into himself in the midst of the events of Heroes in Crisis. So, I don't know if Tom King knows about this. I don't know how he would feel about it if he did know about it.
I don't care what Tom King thinks about it, to be honest with you.
I'm sure you don't, but I would be curious to know. Um, but we did hear some hints. We did get some. Um, I don't know if it was in the solicits or if it was in um, interviews I read, but I remember hearing something or reading something about this flat when Flash returned after Future State, that it was going to be the story of Wally West and maybe the redemption of Wally West. So this might be where that's all leading, and maybe this will satisfy a lot of Wally West fans and a lot of DC fans who couldn't stand Heroes in Crisis and didn't like what was done to Wally there. And we don't even have to wait a full month for it, because apparently the story is going to continue in 2 weeks in the Flash 2021 annual. So I'm curious. I'm looking forward to it. I wouldn't go so far as to say I'm such a huge fan of Heroes in Crisis that I think that they shouldn't change the story. I'm not one of those that hates Heroes in Crisis, but I also don't think that it's so great that it shouldn't be changed. Feelings about it. I appreciate what Tom King was trying to do, and I understand it maybe better than a lot of people, but that's probably because I've read Heroes in Crisis many, many, many times. Like every time an issue came out, I reread the whole series. Plus, I've reread the whole thing in one sitting a couple times since then. So, issue one I've read upwards of 10 times because, issue one came out, I read it. And then when issue two came out, I went back and read issue one and then issue two and then so on and so forth. So when the last issue came out, I went back and reread the whole thing. And like I said, I've reread it since then. I've analyzed it. I've looked at it many, many different ways. And I've gotten a lot out of it. But again, I understand where people are coming from that didn't like it. And so it gives more credence to that cover, which I honestly didn't pay that much attention to when I first started looking at the book. I'm like, oh, welcome to Sanctuary here. I saw kind of because when you get the digital copy and it's zoomed in on your screen, you only see about half the cover. And I just kind of, scrolled right by the bottom half of the cover and didn't realize until later when I went back and looked at it more closely. I'm like, wait, welcome to Sanctuary. Is this what they mean? Or is this what they meant when they talked about, hey, it could be the redemption of Wally West. And plus, if you look at the variant cover by Brett Booth, it's Wally and Arsenal in all different iterations. When he was Speedy, even in one of them, and he appears nowhere in this book. So why would you bother putting him in here? Oh, maybe it's foreshadowing. He's going to go back and not kill Roy Harper, but then how does that gel with what we saw in Infinite Frontier, where Roy Harper was back? I mean, it's time travel, so who knows? But pretty interesting, and I'm sure Rocky feels the exact opposite of me about Heroes in Crisis, and would love to have it erased from existence. But anyway, I thought it was a solid issue, and it definitely it starts off kind of lighthearted and fun with the Legion of Doom sequence, and then it sort of gets more serious as it goes along, more emotional as it goes along with him, with Wally running into his daughter, and then obviously the showing up at Sanctuary at the end. So what were your thoughts, Rocky? Did you like the fact that it's kind of very obvious we're going to get an adjustment to that Heroes in Crisis story? I'm not hearing you, Rocky. No.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yeah. Now
Sorry.
I gotcha. All
Sorry
good.
about that. But yeah, no, I actually didn't mind Heroes in Crisis from I thought emotionally Heroes in Crisis when Wally West lost, he lost his mind a little bit, and it actually resonated with me a little bit. I thought it had some emotional gravitas to it, but I just wish it was a different character other than Wally West. So I thought Tom King did a good job maybe getting into a particular hero's emotion, but Wally West was the wrong character to be put in that position. But in any event, I think a lot of people are going to look at this cover and buy this issue thinking that this is going to be, this cover is improper for this issue. This is not, this should be, this is next issue's story. So I don't know why they're having Wally West, or I guess Barry, on this cover, Welcome to Sanctuary, where heroes come to heal. This never happens in this issue. So this, I think, is an editorial screw up. Either that, or I don't know what the cover looks like for the next issue, but none of this happens in this issue. This issue ends with Wally ending up in the same spot he was in Heroes in Crisis after just having accidentally killed everyone at the Sanctuary. And I say accidentally, kind of, because it was revealed by Joshua Williamson's, one of his final Flash stories was that apparently it was the Reverse Flash, whatever that was, influencing super hypnotically through the Speed Force Wally West's mind. And so they tried to say it wasn't Wally's fault, but now that's not enough of a redemption. And they tried to redeem him with death metal, and then now they're going to try to redeem him again. So I don't know how many different shots at redemption Wally West is going to have. Personally, I don't feel we need another redemption. I thought the Omniverse kind of erased this nonsense crap anyway, so who cares? But in any event, you hit the nail on the head when you spoke earlier about the talking to his children when he talked to Ivy, or I guess Irie is her name, his daughter Irie. She's an older Flash. She's got a connection to the Speed Force. She's there for him. She's explaining to him. She's preparing him for what's to come. She's saying, you're going to have a difficulty with this next part, Dad. You're going to have difficulty where you're going to go next when you jump next, but you're going to get through it and everything's going to be okay, and I'll see you in the future. And that's basically what we have. And overall, I thought it worked okay. Sorry here. Let me see. There we go. I'm just getting my bearings here, but I want to give a compliment to Jeremy Adams here, just to back up a bit. Sorry, I'm just collecting my thoughts. I absolutely love the Super Friends here. Last issue we got, like, what an issue that I felt like was the All-Star Squadron. We got, I love the idea of Flash jumping into different speedsters throughout history. This is so much fun. My favorite characters here, like, this is like watching an old Super Friends cartoon. I mean, it's so much fun. Lex Luthor's character here is hilarious. He's jealous of the reverse of Wally, basically. Well, the Reverse Flash. Wally West jumps into the body of the Reverse Flash, and the Reverse Flash is, they thought that Reverse Flash killed Superman with this lightning, because he flashed in with the lightning bolt as he's jumping from body to body to different speedsters, and it ends up hitting Superman in this particular on this particular Earth, and it's hilarious. And Kevin Maguire, of course, of Justice League, Justice League fame, with the classic Keith Giffen run. He's so great at expressions, and Kevin Maguire's the perfect person to illustrate those interactions between the members of the Legions of Doom, and just the battle that takes place between Lex Luthor and Superman, and of course Wally in the body of Reverse Flash, trying to save Superman, and then at the same time trying to get into the right location, trying to get the Speed Force energies which have been built up into Superman. He's got to get Lex Luthor to shoot him again with the rays in order to prevent Superman from exploding with all that extra Speed Force energy. And the big plot point here is that the Speed Force needs to regurgitate. The real problem is that the Speed Force has nothing from the outside is infecting the Speed Force. The Speed Force has an internal, it's like it's choking or something. I think it was Mr. Terrific that said they got to give the Speed Force the Heimlich maneuver. They got to blurp something out of the Speed Force in order to fix it, and that's what they're desperately going to be trying to do. And in any event, this issue was a lot of fun, and this is, most of the time in most issues, if you get a bunch of artists, it doesn't work very well. But this is exactly the type of story where having more than one artist is perfect, because you are jumping into different incarnations of the characters, different timelines, and you're almost getting the bonus of having more than one comic book at once, and it frankly, I think it works really well, and it works really well. And I got to give full credit to Jeremy Adams, and just another. I'm so much enjoying this Flash run. His explanation of the Speed Force, and he dumbs it down. Even using the analogy of the Heimlich maneuver, I really appreciated, and the emotional connection between Wally and his future daughter. And they're talking about, they've referenced some of who Jay, his son, gets into a relationship with, which is of course the Gold Beetle.
Yeah.
That time traveler who gave him a headache in the previous issue. So it's a good callback to earlier issues, and a good callback in the future state, a future state character that we met. All in all things, this was a fun issue. So yeah, full props. I'd give this one a solid 7.5 out of 10.
Yeah, and I get what you're saying about the cover, but we know covers a lot of times now rarely have to do with what's inside the issue. So I don't begrudge them. I mean, it does tie into the final page. I mean, on the final page, he does go back to Heroes in Crisis, and if it gets people to give it a chance, I'm okay with it. But I do agree with you. It doesn't have that much to do with the story. But then nowadays, what covers do. Yeah. One thing neither one of us mentioned. So, and I think it has been talked about before, but I haven't read the entire Wally West run of the Flash when he had the twins with Linda and whatnot. But Iris West, or Irie, does mention again here about her connection to Speed Force and how maybe she has the strongest connection of anybody. We know Wally has the strongest connection sort of any of the current speedsters, but it's hinted at that the future Iris West, not Barry Allen's Iris, but Wally's daughter Iris, one of the two twins, is basically has the strongest connection and maybe is the most powerful speedster. And that's kind of hinted at again here. Yeah. So, but yeah, great job on art. Michael Atiyeh on colors. Despite the fact that we have different artists with very different styles, it does work because it is jumping around in different eras. Like like Rocky said, but you do have the consistency of the color artist to hold it all together. So, all right. Well, moving on to the next book. It's Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow. This is Tom King's latest project over at DC, and I don't know. I heard some people excited about this. Others were kind of meh. Um, but I hope that everybody gives it a chance because I think it is something special. So it's written by Tom King. Bilquis Evely does the art, which is absolutely fantastic. Matthias Lopez on colors, Clayton Cowell on letters. And I'll give you a chance to go first, Rocky. What did you think of this this first issue?
Well, you know what? You and I, every time we review something from Tom King lately, we're giving him a compliment, and I got to give him a compliment on this. Maybe we could all get on his butt a little bit for Heroes in Crisis, but I mean, we're enjoying his Rorschach, we're enjoying his Adam Strange. I mean, and this Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow, this opening issue, man, I love the art. Bilquis Evely does just an amazing job. And I really, really enjoy even this alternate cover here, Gary Frank. Just it's gorgeous. I like the simplicity of this. I like this, even the opening narration in this issue. It's being narrated essentially by actually the young girl, a young girl whose father is murdered, and this young girl essentially wants to. She's on this. We start off in almost like think of Conan the Barbarian. Like we're on a barbaric world that's surrounded by a red sun, and this young girl is looking for a warrior that she can hire by giving him this sword in order to avenge the death of her father, who's been killed by this particular individual. And this young woman is determined, and the language in which Tom King narrates this or gives voice to this character is very well done. One thing about Tom King is that he is good at that. He is good, and often Tom King will borrow from other authors and other works of art. But here he uses his own words, and he should more often because he does it very well here. And this young girl, this young woman, she goes into town to try to hire somebody to avenge the death of her father, and she ends up wandering into this tavern, and she talks to this Conan the Barbarian type of character who is prepared to take as his reward, once he kills this person who murdered her father, he'll keep the sword. But he's very arrogant, he's very chauvinistic toward her, and he even slaps this young woman when she gets a little bit too lippy with him, in terms of the way that she wants to get it. They don't come to perfect terms, but he decides he's going to rewrite the terms of the deal. And you see this blonde in the corner, and it's this drunken Supergirl. Well, we readers know it's Supergirl right away. And right away you're wondering as the reader, why is Supergirl here? And why and how can she be drunk? And of course you discover that Kara is she's there. It's her 21st birthday, and so she's going to a planet with a red sun so she can get drunk, because she's on a planet with a yellow sun. She's of course Kryptonian. She's not going to be able to get drunk, so she's just going to get drunk. And she's by herself. It's kind of depressing and pathetic, really. But she's 21 years old. She's a little depressed. But she's even in a drunken state, she's not going to sit idly back while this girl is essentially robbed by this Conan type of character. And it's quite good. Bilquis Evely does a great job illustrating Supergirl taking this guy out. And just beautiful scenes. I mean, I would kill to own some of the original art here. Just absolutely gorgeous art. There's one scene, a full page spread with Supergirl holding two swords, and one to the Conan-like character on the ground, and she certainly doesn't appear drunk, but she ends up passing out, and this young woman she ends up passing out. This young woman helps her. Kara wakes up, and Ultimately, they end up at the end being Kara just wants to leave the planet. She's kind of all depressed. She was just there for the 21st birthday. And where 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 this story really works for me is right away you Tom King is getting into the head of Supergirl. Supergirl just wants to leave. And it's clear that Supergirl is there because she's depressed. She's trying to escape something. She's trying to escape the thoughts of her past, of her upbringing, of and the it might seem a little bit tropey and maybe it might seem obvious to some readers, but I really like how Tom King utilizes the experience of this young woman who loses her father. And this young woman is so adamant that she wants Supergirl, she wants Kara to revenge her father. She wants to hire Kara. You take my sword. And Kara doesn't want to do that. But this young girl is about avenge and revenge. And you don't understand. I've lost everything. And the most poignant scene in the whole, what made the comic for me is this young woman says, all that flighty talk of compassion and fury, that's dandy if you're living on ground you know will stand solid. But I lost my world, she says to Kara. And that's what brought the story for me. Is that, yeah, for this young woman, when she lost her dad, she lost her world. And those were words that really impacted on Kara. Because she also lost her world. And who was there for her? No one was. Kara lost her world too. And Kara went to this world to escape, to get drunk and escape all her problems. And one of her problems is not really dealing with the loss of her world. And this just really resonated, and you could tell that had an impact on Kara. And as this happens, they get attacked by this Conan, the character, looking for revenge, and it's a semi-successful attack because again, it's a planet with a red sun, and ultimately, it ends in such a way that Kara is on this planet now. I believe stranded, at least for the time being, and she's going to help this young girl avenge her father's death. And this really worked for me. I've talked long enough. Jace, I don't know, man. Are you as impressed as I was with this, or what?
Yeah, so I like what you said right at the beginning there. You talked about the simplicity of the story, and I think that's why it works so well. Because yeah, there's kind of the obvious sort of story beat here or plot point where Kara sees herself in this little girl, right? Like you're right. She does say, I've lost my father. I've lost my whole world. And the insinuation being that that Kara doesn't understand, right? Because Kara tells her that when she tries to beg off, hey, where I come from, my job, I have a lot of responsibilities. And one of those responsibilities is I don't kill. I understand your anger and it's hard to lose somebody. You have to look for justice, not vengeance. You have to look for compassion, not fury. I mean, those are all things that Kara herself has strived to exhibit in her own life, right? Don't be angry, be compassionate, look for justice, not vengeance. I mean, Kara could be talking to herself because of everything she's lost, right? We know Kara has a great capacity for anger. Just look at the fact that she was a Red Lantern, was the leader of the Red Lanterns for a little while. And so when she tells this to Ruth Marie Knoll, and Ruth's response is, "You understand? You don't understand a damn thing." And it's great, the panel that Bilquis Evely gives us there as Supergirl's kind of looking down in a way because she's trying to keep her emotions in check because she does understand. Ruth is saying, "I've lost my whole world," metaphorically. Kara has actually lost her whole world. She's actually lost everybody, not just her father, but her mother and everybody that she ever cared about, with the exception, obviously, of her young cousin who was, just a babe at the time, and she wouldn't have had a relationship, to speak of with him. So again, it's very obvious and it's very simple in its conception to see that Kara is really getting a chance to talk to her younger self and help steer her younger self so that maybe Ruth doesn't end up making the same mistakes that Supergirl has made with with her anger and those types of things. And even though it's a simple idea and concept, it's executed very, very well. There's just little things that make the story jump off the page. Yes, Kara, it is very depressing when you think about it. Kara going to a planet with a red sun so she can get drunk on her 21st birthday and drown her memories, because it is a milestone in Kryptonian time. It is a milestone as an Earthling, turning 21. And she doesn't have those that she first loved. She doesn't have those people that she first grew up with, that her first family to celebrate with. But in passing such a milestone in her life, her thoughts can't help but turn that way. So, she just wants to be left in peace. But like you said, Rocky, she's a hero, and she's not going to stand by while this girl is taken advantage of. So it's a simple idea, but it's executed extremely well. The other thing that is done very well is, like you said, the narration that we get from Ruth Marie. She does talk in almost a very sort of proper English, I guess you'd say, which is very interesting because it's very much juxtaposed against the fact that even on this planet, this barbaric world, she's rural, right? She's supposedly doesn't know much, and she's not sophisticated. She grew up on a rock farm. Does that mean they literally farm rocks? Because that's certainly what it sounds like. But that's all sort of turned on its head when you hear her actually talk. She speaks very well. And so that's interesting that Tom King chooses to kind of use her language to give us this idea that she's maybe much smarter than the average rural person on this world. I guess certainly a bit more sophisticated and self-aware than her brothers, right? Because we get that whole scene about after her father is first killed, she is there at the dinner table, the family dinner table, with all her, I think she has 6 or 7 brothers, and they're all speaking of vengeance and going after this Kim of the Yellow Hills, and eventually it's all bluster, right? They sort of talk themselves out. They get all their anger and frustration out just amongst the talk, and because they realize they kind of don't have power to really do anything, and if they try to, they're going to end up the same way their father did, namely dead, if they speak out against the king. There's an insinuation that maybe their father at some point had spoken out against the king. So, ultimately they decided we're just going to leave it in the hands of their god to make it. I can't remember exactly what they refer to it as, but they're going to leave it in the hands of some greater deity, and that will be where the justice comes from. The divine, that's the word they use. We're going to leave it to the divine, whereas Ruth Marie is much more practical. She's like, well, that's all well and good, but I don't know that the divine exists, and I'm going to go take it upon myself to take this sword that Kim used to kill my father. And there's some interesting introspection there from Ruth Marie Noel about why Kim left. So he stabs her father with the sword, but leaves the sword in her father. Why wouldn't he take it? Especially because that's what she's going to use to pay whoever's going to take the bounty, because it's so intricately carved and clearly worth something, which is why the other Conan type character tries to steal it from her. So there's a lot of little things here that hint at a grander story, not least of which is right from the beginning, right on the first page, where I was hooked anyway, with the narration of Ruth Marie Noel, and the pictures we get. We're seen in silhouette. This Kim of the Yellow Hills kill her father, or Krem of the Yellow Hills, and what's interesting is during this narration, we're being told things about Supergirl that you're like, wait, what? What did it just say? Supergirl delivered the fatal blow and Krem fell dead to the ground. Oh wait, I'm telling the story in the wrong way, right? Let me. I'm writing ahead of myself, as I tend to do, but should not. So right away, like right from the start, it's actually the second page where we get that narration from Ruth, and you're like, wait, Supergirl's going to kill somebody? Because she goes on and on at the end of the book, or toward the end of the story about, hey, I don't kill, And of course, we know that Supergirl doesn't kill, but would she? Would she? Like, does she see so much of herself in this little girl that she would make that choice? It certainly seems so. So how are we going to get there?
Yeah.
So interesting. So I loved it. Specifically, I think my favorite thing about it is the voice that Tom King, the vocabulary, which in turn informs the voice of Ruth Mary Knoll. I'm not sure if it's Marie or Mary. It's Marye. So could go either way.
Yeah,
But
I'm not
yeah,
going to attempt it. The
yeah,
pronunciation, so
yeah. Maybe Tom will reach out and
just say
and
Marie.
correct us. Yeah, but I thought it was spectacular. The art is amazing. This is a science fiction story, right? It's set in space. It's Supergirl. That is certainly science fiction, but this world is much more fantasy. So it's kind of a mashup between the two, and the art style that Bilquis Evely exhibits. Her art style is perfect to tell this sort of story, this hybrid fantasy sci-fi story that very much may redefine Supergirl for us. I wonder how much this might take Supergirl in the direction of the dreaded future state. I mean, that future state, Kara, was it Kara Zor-El Superwoman? Was one of the worst ones I felt. It just didn't click for me. So,
Well, it was boring, and one of the aspects, the most interesting aspects of Supergirl that has been explored repeatedly is her anger issues. She
yep.
was a Red Lantern for a period of time. Her anger issue was one of the central plot points when she was going after Rogol Zaar, even during Bendis' run, which was actually one of the better Superman family comic books written by Mark Andreyko. And in fact, it was Supergirl's anger that attracted Rogol Zaar's axe to her, and that was a very interesting plot element, I thought. And in any event, she's always had anger within her, and I think that this might be through Tom King. Maybe the best attempt to explore Supergirl's truly coming to terms with that anger, flowing from what she must have witnessed while on Argo City as after Krypton exploded. Tom King gave a very interesting interview when he was talking about when his understanding of Supergirl's origin was very informative, and in Tom King's mind, and he's not wrong, Supergirl witnessed the death of Argo City actually at least 2 or 3 times, because when Argo City, he says, when the planet Krypton exploded, a chunk of it, Argo City, remained intact, but it turned into kryptonite. And so Kara's father created lead shielding, but it kept wearing down, so that people were slowly dying from kryptonite radiation poisoning. So she witnessed her world die a few times as they kept trying to prevent the inevitable, until finally she was rocketed away from Argo City by her father to come to Earth. So what she witnessed was the destruction of her world in a very slow and torturous way. At least that's in the mindset of Tom King. And I actually like that, because what impact does that experience have on Supergirl's psyche? And she was unable to save them, and so it, and I think that might be explored as I'm sure we're going to get some flashbacks in Supergirl's mind, because Tom King is really good at flashbacks. He's got a propensity for that as well. But he's very good at it when he nails it, as he has at times with Adam Strange and Rorschach. So we'll
The other aspect of this is, looking at Supergirl as simply a derivative of Superman, which she kind of was pre-Crisis, and you struggle with that. If somebody's so derivative, you struggle with that to make them interesting, and post-Crisis, we didn't have a Supergirl, right? Because John Byrne's whole ultimatum, only Superman survived. And we finally got a Supergirl. She was this protoplasmic, whatever. So it wasn't until Batman Superman that we got the real, true Supergirl that's been returned to us. And since then, I would argue it's the same kind of thing. Like, how do we make her interesting? How do we make her interesting? And that anger is something that has come out. But I still feel like we haven't gotten a definitive idea of who Kara is, post Crisis. She's been inconsistent. She's had a lot of different series, a lot of different volumes, and she hasn't been consistent. So, except for that anger, that has been probably the most consistent thing about her. And it's probably what, if you remember, she got infected during that year of the villain as well.
That's right. Yeah.
Likely due to some anger issues. So yeah, she's not always. She's a much more maligned character than her older cousin. Her younger / older cousin because of stasis and relativity and whatnot. So yeah, I'll be curious to see 8 issues. I saw some people wondering if it was 12 on social media. 8 issues, and I think Tom King's gonna put a pretty good stamp on Kara here. So
Yeah.
all right, up next we have Nightwing number 81, the aforementioned, written by Tom Taylor. The art is by Bruno Redondo. Let me get to the credits page here. It's probably right at the end. Nope. Sorry, I'm just looking for the credits here. This is what I've complained before about DC not having them in the same place all the time. Adriana Lucas does colors, Wes Abbott on letters. And I'm just going to throw it out there right now. So the big spoiler that we were talking about earlier, we saw her first appear in the pages of Nightwing 78, Tom Taylor's first issue. Marlene Zuko, who we saw Blockbuster kill. She was deputy mayor or whatnot, and we saw Blockbuster in 78 kill the mayor, and so Marlene Zuko becomes mayor. And in this
I
issue,
think it's
we
Melinda,
see her.
isn't it? Melinda.
Melinda. Right, you're right. Melinda Zuko. She gets sworn in as mayor, and then immediately walks into some back room where all the sort of the crime underworld movers and shakers of Bloodhaven are there, and she seems like, okay, hey, we're gonna make this city great. We're gonna all be wealthy. We're gonna extend our power beyond this city, and she definitely seems to be not a good person. And she ends up capturing Nightwing at the end. And when Nightwing confronts her, saying, I know who you are. You're the daughter of Tony Zuko. And remember, Tony Zuko is the one that ordered Dick Grayson's parents killed. So he definitely holds a grudge. And Melinda says, no, I'm not. I thought I was, but then I learned the truth. I'm actually the daughter of John Grayson. I'm your sister. And of course, we've got Dick Grayson there, shocked, mouth agape. And so that's the big bombshell that Tom Taylor drops here. Apparently, he has a sister he never knew about. I have mixed feelings about it, like I often do when you introduce something like this. That's, again, we're talking about Dick Grayson. Here's a character that's been around for 80 years, and it's 80 years later he finds out he has a long lost sister. That is a long time to go. And again, I guess it's not 80, obviously, because Dick Grayson's not 85 years old. It's not 80 real years, in terms of how long the character's been around. Maybe it's only, 10 or 15 years. And so that part of it to me is always like, I feel a little iffy about it. But in terms of telling an interesting story, yeah, I guess it's interesting enough. I mean, I was certainly surprised. I mean, surprised, not surprised, because it did get spoiled for me. But it's an interesting take. The other part of it where I kind of swing back the other way is, though, I was like, so is she going to become, is she going to put on a costume? Is she going to become another member of the Bat family? Because God knows there's enough members of the Bat family, and so I kind of feel weird about that as well. But there's potential here for some really cool stories, and I mean, God knows how Dick is going to react. So I guess ultimately, and I did also think maybe this could be just all a scam, right? And I'm not saying that Melinda Zuko is trying to run a scam on Dick Grayson. It could be that someone's running a scam on her and she's buying into it, specifically to get close to Dick Grayson because they know he's Nightwing. And then it'll turn out in the end, we'll find out, 20 issues from now that she was never really his sister after all. And Tony Zuko found out that Dick was Nightwing or something like that, along those lines. Just because she says, I'm your sister, doesn't mean she's actually his sister. So there's a lot to unpack here. And unfortunately, I think that revelation is going to overshadow that bombshell, that cliffhanger, whatever you want to call it. It's going to overshadow the rest of the issue, because that's all anybody's going to talk about. But the rest of the issue is solid. We get Nightwing taking on Heartless for the first time, and he sort of underestimates Heartless, which that might be the first time that I feel like Tom Taylor didn't get the characterization right of Dick Grayson. Dick Grayson is a pretty careful hero, and I don't really see him usually make mistakes like underestimating a villain like that when he doesn't know anything about him. So I thought that was a little bit out of character, but it's a minor nitpick. I thought the fight between Heartless and Nightwing, for the most part, was pretty cool. There's a real emotional moment where Nightwing sort of appeals to the other citizens of Bloodhaven to come and help these kids that were caught in the fire. They're trapped on a pier because of the fire that Heartless started in their little homeless encampment, and it's really cool that Tom Taylor gives a shout out to a lot of previous Nightwing comic creators in the names of the ship. Like Devin is responding, that would be Devin Grayson. The Seeley, which would be Tim Seeley. Leonardi would be Rick Leonardi. The Jurgens, obviously Dan Jurgens. So they're all coming. The Constant, that would be Andrew Constant. Fernandez is on the way. That would be Juan Fernandez, the artist who's worked a lot on Nightwing. So I thought that was really cool. That was fun. It's Tom Taylor, so of course we get a little bit of humor where Tim Drake is calling their dog Bitewing, and he says, "Oh, Bitewing, that's pretty good, but actually her name's Haley." And Robin says, "Oh, you're telling me that people in this room can't have multiple names?" And Barbara Gordon chimes in with, "I have three." You know, she's Barbara Gordon, she's Oracle, she's Batgirl. So, yeah, I thought that it's a solid issue all around, and the art by Bruno Redondo is as fantastic as ever. But like I said, the real takeaway everybody's going to have from this issue is, oh, that's where Melinda Zuko said, "I'm your sister." So that's how it's going to play. But there's more to unpack than that. This does make me more interested in who Heartless is and what his powers might be and what exactly he's after. But that, as much as that sort of plot takes up a good half the issue, if not more, the Melinda Zuko storyline is really what drives the issue and what everybody will be talking about. So still a fantastic issue. I'm still really digging Nightwing. I can easily say this is my favorite run of Nightwing ever so far, and we're only 4 issues in?
Yeah.
78, 79, 80, 81. Yeah. It's fantastic. So, what were your thoughts, Rocky?
Well, the revelation, the big revelation that Melinda is not only the mayor, but that she is also the sister, daughter of Tony Zuko, sister of long lost sister of Dick Grayson. Wow. She's also, I think Tom King is giving us a little bit of a clue here. She's got an extensive FBI profile, according to Oracle. And it makes me want, a lot of her FBI profile is apparently redacted. So it makes me wonder if maybe she's not also undercover. She also clearly didn't seem to be inclined to want to hurt Dick Grayson. I mean, she's got to know. I don't believe for one moment. I mean, it seems so rehearsed that when she was that at the beginning of the issue where she has that swearing in ceremony as mayor, and then there's a second ceremony that she has to go to, and that's to swear allegiance to Blockbuster. And it almost seems like she, Blockbuster tells her to take a seat and tell me your plans for my city. I mean the arrogance of Blockbuster to say that to the mayor of the city, that it's his, and she almost overly obedient says, my plan is to make us all much wealthier and extend your city beyond the city, but to do so in a way that builds on the good work you've already done. I mean, it's like reverence to Blockbuster. It's just ridiculous and over the top. Blockbuster needs a bitch slap, and you can bloody well expect that he's going to get it sooner rather than later from Nightwing. It wouldn't be the first time. And I have a feeling that I hope Melinda's a a good guy. I think she's undercover. I think
Yeah,
she's
I do
deep
too.
undercover.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think that's what the redacted FBI profile is all about. And I think that I think that's where we're headed on this. I hope. It's also possible. I mean, we could be headed for some tragedy too. I mean, Tom Taylor's not afraid. He's not afraid to kill off characters. So, I mean, I got all this stuff going on in my head in terms of where this could go. I think this is a fantastic development. I love it. I think it's building Nightwing's world. The humor in here, the dialogue is spot on. I love Bitewing. I love. There was a scene. I even love Barbara Gordon was wearing a Batman shirt that with the Batman meme with Batman slapping Robin. She was wearing that shirt. Like, anyways, I really liked it. Just the rapport between Tim Drake, Barbara Gordon, Dick Grayson. Dick Grayson's stubbornness that you knew damn well he wasn't going to get 24 hours rest, 8 hours rest. He was going to go and he was going to do his investigating. Heartless, such a great villain. I actually think that Dick Grayson, Dick Grayson he's absolutely fought metahumans before, and he underestimated Heartless, but Heartless also underestimated Dick Grayson. And even in his compromised state, it was Heartless that took off and left like a coward. So he was afraid of Nightwing. Heartless left. I mean, Heartless got the best of Nightwing at first, but then Nightwing got the best of him. And the only way that Heartless could escape was to blow up the pier, where the kids were at, where Tim Drake was, and they ultimately needed to be rescued by the citizens of Bloodhaven, which was a nice callback to the Batman movie, the Nolan Batman movie, where calling upon the citizens of Gotham, that the citizens of Gotham are good, while the citizens of Bloodhaven are pretty damn good too, and they came to the rescue, and what a great, like I said, the callback to Jurgens and Fernandez and all the names of the various people that done work on Nightwing. Fantastic. I mean, again, I've heard some people have said that there's a lot of fan service with Tom Taylor, and he's given us a lot of fan service here, and I love it. And because there's nothing wrong with fan service. Some types of fan service by writers are pandering. This is not pandering. This is just really great storytelling, and it makes sense. It comes together well, and it's the type of fan service that good writing is supposed to be. Just telling a good story and a tribute to the character and the fans. I love this. This was my favorite of the week. This issue, hands down.
Yeah, I can see why some people would feel like Tom Taylor's a very fan-friendly writer, but at the same time, you got to be careful because he pulls you in, and then he'll kill somebody off, or he'll, spin something out in a different way than you expect, and it ends up having more impact than it would have otherwise if it wasn't for the fact that he's pulling you in by making you think he's going in one direction, which is exactly what I was saying about maybe it's, at this point, we think it's Dick Grayson's sister, and maybe she believes it, but it could all be a fake. Or, like you said, because I totally believe she's undercover and she's not really evil. It could be that this is all just a false identity, that really a Melindo Zuko doesn't even exist. Yeah. That, it's all just a plant because she's, as you said, deep undercover. So maybe it'll tie into Bendis's Checkmate.
Oh, man.
Sorry, did I ruin
I
it
hope
for
not. You? I really hope not.
All right. Well, let's move on to the next book we're going to talk about. I already mentioned it real briefly at the beginning. It's Catwoman. We're up to issue 32, written by Ram V. We have a fill-in artist this issue, Evan Cagle. At least I think it's a fill-in artist. Jordi Belair handles the colors. Tom Napolitano on letters. Everything you know about Selina Kyle. And it's an interesting way that this issue is structured. So we've got the priest, Father, I can't even remember his last name, but the real creepy guy with the glasses.
Father Valley. There
you go. Yeah. I wonder if he's related to John Paul Valley at all, Azrael. But anyway, he's torturing one of the strays to try to get information and tell me everything you know about Selina Kyle. and he starts giving her what information he knows, because he basically says, it doesn't matter. I can tell you anything about Selena, and it won't matter because she's better than you. She's better than all of us. And then we get sort of the same scene repeated in Alleytown later, when the police are cracking down on the strays again because of Selena Kyle, because of what happened with her rescuing Poison Ivy. And this is the beginnings of the Magistrate, right? We were even told by a news reporter that Alleytown has been a real hive of activity because of Mayor Nakano's new law enforcement initiative, which is basically hiring this private security infrastructure, which we all know as the Magistrate. So this is what I was mentioning earlier about, we're continuing down that path of future state, which we can veer off that anytime. We can toss the Magistrate in the garbage at any point. I'm so sick and tired of fascism as the villain in comics. I've talked about it. I'm not going to rant on again about it here, but ready to move on beyond that. Okay, we need to have different villains. Let's move on from fascism. But anyway, we get one of the strays who's basically saying the same thing. You think you're going to get Selena Kyle? You don't have a clue, do you? You know, when the cop's saying, I want you to tell me everything you know about Selena Kyle. And basically relaying the story. Okay, well, let me tell you about who Selena Kyle was. Even at the tender age of, 11 or 12, she was better than everybody else. So don't you understand, detective? Like, you think you're here to get her? No, you're too late, too slow, 2 steps too short. You're never gonna catch her, basically. And Caceres saying the same thing, you're never gonna catch her. And then there's a couple of other guys, a couple other police officers who are talking to Maggie Kyle, Selena's sister, saying, again, tell me everything you know about Selena Kyle. Oh, you think you already know her? Well, let me explain to you what happened when she came to rescue me from the blast, the Black Mask. She stood on the ledge and watched as his fingers let go one by one. And you think that she's been good at getting out of tough spots, and you think whatever's happened now has gone too far. This is exactly what she planned. The only thing Selena doesn't know how to plan for is all the collateral damage around her, basically. So I made my peace with it because I'm her sister, but you want to know everything about Selena Kyle? Know this. You should stay away from her for your own sake. So it's a very, in a way, a cynical way to look at Selena, to look at who she is as Catwoman. It does very much reflect how Selena sees herself. And what I love best about this issue, because first of all, I've said this before, Ram V has the most authentic Selena Kyle voice. This is who Selena Kyle is. This characterization, more than any writer I've ever had, more than any Catwoman story I've ever read, this to me is who Selena Kyle would be based on what we know of her upbringing, her influences, her family, and the tragedies that she's been through. The only other one that comes sort of close to this is just that real simple Year One story from Frank Miller. This feels like Ram V feels like he read Year One, didn't necessarily read anything else that had Catwoman in it, and just said, okay, knowing what I know of Selena Kyle and Catwoman from the Year One story, let me extrapolate everything else from those 4 issues and build upon it, and this is what you get. And so to me, this is the best, without question, Catwoman characterization and Selena Kyle characterization that we've ever had. What makes that so interesting is how it plays with everything else, because clearly Ram V didn't just read those 4 issues. He's way too much of a professional for that. And I think he especially paid attention to what Tom King has done or did in his Batman run, and also what James Tynion has done, in what really the whole Batman family of books are doing with Selena Kyle recently. Because when you look at that, when you look at what the story that Ram V is telling through the lens of all those other complicated storylines that are going on, what Joelle Jones did, after Selena basically left Bruce at the altar, and then everything that happened in the Joker War. She becomes a much more complicated character because of all those other storylines and all those other portrayals of her. And then how does that play into how we see Selina Kyle through the lens of how Ram V wants to show her? And that's where the really interesting part comes in. How do you reconcile? How does Selina herself reconcile who we know her to be, or who she's always been to herself and the way she sees herself, which is the way Ram V is portraying her, with all these extraneous forces, with her, this emotion she feels for Bruce Wayne. And to me, that's the most interesting part of it, right? Like, at her core, Selina feels like should be by herself, that she's alone, that she's very self-reliant and doesn't need anybody else. But yet you can think that in your head, but the heart wants what the heart wants. And that's what's so interesting about the Batman Catwoman relationship and love. And then obviously if Batman Catwoman, the Black Label book, does enter canon at some day, we know they end up married. So it's that sort of thing that really makes this such a fascinating read, because I think this is who Selina is. She's aloof, and she tries to put her feelings aside, and she tries to just be the best she is at what she does. Kind of like Wolverine, I guess you'd say, in that way. But she can't turn off. There is that part of her emotion, her heart, her love for Bruce, her love for her sister. She does care on some level, and certainly cares for the strays and sort of her allies in Alleytown, and will go, above and beyond to help save them and protect them. And so she's fiercely loyal in that way as well. So there's all these different complexities and all these different sides to Selina Kyle, which is why, in a way, it's so amusing to have all these different characters, reaching out to people that know Selina well, saying, tell me everything you know about Selina Kyle. She can't be put in a box. She's too complicated for that. And I just find it fascinating. So this was my favorite issue, my favorite DC book of the week, just because I think it's expertly done, and the cover, it kind of foreshadows that, right? We see Father Valley, he's opening up his Bible, and all these different pictures of Catwoman are falling out in different costumes that she's worn over the years. But in a way, Ram V is finding a way to reconcile all those different versions of Catwoman that we've had over the years, and distilling it down to this perfect voice for her that I think he's had for her characterization throughout his run. So, and as far as the art goes, like I said, I think it's a guest artist, Evan Cagle. I think Fernando Blanco will be back, but I thought he did a pretty solid job. But I thought the art was a little inconsistent. There's a few panels where the art is absolutely spectacular, and then there's other panels where I didn't feel the storytelling was quite as strong as it could be. But again, I'm not familiar with him, so he may not be that experienced. But there are times when his art would remind me of other artists, like the panel where Maggie Kyle's brushing her hair behind her ear. That looked so much to me like a Brad Walker rendered illustration, except with finer lines. And then there's a few other lines where it looks like straight out of manga, or a few other panels rather. So I'd be interested in seeing him on a book long term, just to see him kind of solidify his style. But anyway, I thought it was fantastic. What did you think, Rocky?
I thought this was really good. This was a very close second for me for with Nightwing. This was excellent. I honestly, I had to, even if Yvonne Cagle's art was it. I had to double check because at first I didn't realize it was much different. It's very stylistically. It's very similar to it's Fernando Blanco, isn't it? Normally, the artist. And but yeah, because it's gorgeous. It's absolutely gorgeous. You spoke of the different incarnations of Catwoman and how Ram V is trying to sort of maybe draw his own reconciliations of all those different incarnations, and through Father Valley. Father Valley is the villain, and he wants to get a handle on who Catwoman is too, and that's why he's torturing one of the strays. I don't think that while I applaud the effort on the part of Ram V, I will say that I don't know how deep you can really dive into Catwoman, Selena, because I think at heart I've never really found her to be a complicated character, and I'm not getting the sense that she's a complicated character in the nature of this story. I mean, the big revelation here that the only thing Selena can't plan for are the things that happen to people on her side, as her sister Maggie says. Well, that's true of every hero. I mean, you can never plan for all the things that are going to happen if a bad guy harms people on your side. That's not really saying much. Uh, although I will say that, um, you know, it what this issue did emphasize that I thought and emphasize very well is that Selena is somebody. She's a thief. She's a thief at heart, and in many ways, she's a loner. And she herself is a stray cat. She's a loner, and yet when she loves somebody, she loves them to death because they usually die. The Frank Baz character, one of the first people she fell in love with, another thief, at the beginning of the story, he ends up dying, and she ends up, instead of killing the person who killed him, she ends up apprehending the person and going back and getting even, and but not killing him, and so she does have her own sense of moral code. She her first mentor was Mama Fortuna, who was the original leader of the Strays in Alleytown, and she essentially used to be a stray cat herself, a stray herself, and eventually sort of took over the Strays. I think Ram V is creating that new history for Selena Kyle. I don't know if that's if that's ever been part of Selena Kyle's history before, where she grew up a stray and was mentored by this Mama Fortuna or whatever. I think that's building on that. Mama Fortuna I've heard before, but in any event, I like that aspect of it. The whole he's building up the lore of Alleytown, and it's not just Gotham City. This is Alleytown in Gotham City is its own world, and it's really Selena Kyle. Batman. Gotham City might have Batman, but Alleytown within Gotham has Catwoman, and that's her world. And she might be somewhat of a loner and a thief herself, but she's almost like a queen of her. She's like the queen cat, and she protects everybody. And I don't know if I agree 100% with Maggie, because I think she's a pretty. I mean, her sister Maggie's a screwed up narrator. I mean, she's had a lot of mental health issues. She's been through quite a lot, Maggie, her sister, and so. Maggie here has said in the issue, I've made my peace with the fact that, Selena can't always protect me, is essentially what she's saying. And yeah, I suppose get used to it. I mean, if that's just the nature of the beast when you're if you're going to be a friend of Selena Kyle or Bruce Wayne or anybody else in the DC universe, you got to always you always have a target on your back. But in any event, I enjoyed it. I love Father Valley. I think he's trying to prop him up. I don't know what the hell Father Valley learned that was of any use to him. He was already torturing and hurting Selena Kyle's friends, and he ends up stabbing the Stray at the end of this issue. So he didn't need to hear all these stories. So I don't know if this issue maybe was the reason why this isn't first place for me is because of this whole issue. I thought maybe was not even completely necessary, but really enjoyable, because there's always that cinematic feel with Ram V, where you're getting a lot of bang for your buck, and it's a character driven tale. You get into Maggie's head, the detective's head, the Stray's head, Selena Kyle's different incarnations of Selena Kyle. Great art, man, the full package. I'm happy.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you in that. Well, you said Selena's a simple character. She's just a thief. I think she started out that way, but I think that's where the conflict comes. The inner conflict comes is she wants to be that simple person. She wants to not care and not have responsibilities that come along with emotional attachments to people. But I think over the years, her life has become more complicated because she has made those connections. She has fallen in love with Batman. She does care about her sister. She has become the queen of Alleytown and whatever responsibilities come with that. And so I think Selena is finding herself, you know, more responsible than she wants to be, or having more attachments than she maybe would prefer if she had the choice. And I think that's what's interesting about what Ramvi is doing and why this is such a great story of Catwoman, and why it's the best Catwoman story that we've ever had, because it is exploring this idea of, who is she? Is she the loner? Is she the loner thief, or is she something more? Do these relationships that she's had and attachments that she's had over the years, are they starting to become the priority? And in that way, you almost think that as DC editorial has decided to make her a bigger part of kind of the Batman supporting cast with a possible marriage in the future. We almost got it, didn't consummate, but kind of similar to Harley Quinn, kind of whitewashing her a little bit, because in the past, Catwoman wouldn't really have any problem with killing, but in this issue, we get a tale of one of her first heists, and she, leaves the guy tied up in front of his empty safe rather than killing him, despite the fact that this guy had killed her first love. That doesn't necessarily jive with the Catwoman we know from back in the day.
That's exactly
but certainly
right.
does jive with the Catwoman that DC wants to give us now. They live more in the gray area. Comics are a little more complicated. So anyway, on to Static Shock season number 1. So this is the first of the Milestone books that are bringing the Milestone characters back to the DC universe. We did have it was first released digitally. The Milestone Returns Zero issue was released digitally last year during the Fandom event. And then we got a printed version recently and a digital version, I think, in February. And so now we're getting the first of the actual issues for Milestone Returns. And I'm really excited. So Static Season 1, as it's titled, written by Vita Ayala, layouts by Chris Cross, finishes and colors by Nicholas Draper Ivy, letters by Ann World Designs. And the other cool thing is on the main cover that we see Static Shock, there's a movie theater in the background. And the name of the movie theater is McDuffie, and that's referencing the late, great Dwayne McDuffie, who was one of the founders of Milestone. But on the marquee, not only do we see McDuffie's name, we see Cowan, which is a reference to Dennis Cowan, another one of the founders. Davis, which is a reference to Michael S. Davis, another of the founders of Milestone Media. And Dingle, which is Derek Dingle. I don't think he was one of the original founders, but he came in very, very early. So it's great that they're referencing these 4 that had much to do with the Milestone Media Universe, Dakotaverse, as it was called, during the first go round. So it's back finally, long awaited. And what did you think of this first issue of Static, Rocky?
Just full disclosure, I'm actually reading about Static really for the first time. I remember years ago reading a couple issues. I really completely forgot about it. So this was a complete refresh from my memory. I couldn't even tell you if this is a redo of his origin or if it's different in any way. So this was really, I feel like I'm, for all intents and purposes, I'm reading this cold, and I liked it. Again, I thought it was well done. I will say that, first of all, the multiple different covers here, I think, are great. I do think that the $4.99 price tag is a little bit high for these variant covers. I think for an introductory issue for getting to know Static is a little bit high. It should be $3.99. Also, you keep calling him Static Shock, and I know that it was before. Does he just go by Static now, or is he go by Static Shock?
That's a good question, and I don't know the answer.
I'm just because I'm ignorant on that. It's called Static, but I'm thinking I always thought it was Static Shock too. But in any event, I think I actually don't mind this story as an origin story. I like it. The origin story that it starts off with the Big Bang, and I'm not talking about the beginnings of the universe. The Big Bang refers to an event. And the Big Bang was a protest. It was a BLM protest, Black Lives Matter protest, where young Virgil Hawkins, who will become Static, attends this protest, and the police in Dakota City, in breaking up this protest, use some gas, but they use an experimental gas to tear gas to break up the crowds, and this tear gas actually causes a lot of the people in the crowd to some die, some faces melt, and they all have different reactions to this gas, and of course for Virgil Hawkins, he ends up with static powers or electrical powers of some kind, and so do some other people in the crowd, including Francis Stone, who will go by Hot Streak, and his arch nemesis Hot Streak is also a bully, and so it's a little bit tropey. But these are teenagers. These are teenagers that attend a rally, a Black Lives Matter rally, and they end up getting superpowers by this formative Big Bang event, and in fact, they're known as Bang Babies, and so. Credit to Vita Ayala. I mean, she's developing a narrative here. These Bang Babies, who are they're known as these individuals that acquire these powers. I guess they're people of interest, and I'm not sure where this is going to go. There's a little bit of maybe a kind of a New Mutants kind of vibe. I'm getting a little bit of a vibe in that, even though there's no mentor of Static. If you've read the Milestone Returns as I have, which was very helpful to me, this does overlap. For example, the character known as Hardware, he's actually the person who created the gas, the tear gas that broke up the crowd, but it wasn't ready for use, but Alva Industries used it anyway. And they're blaming this Hardware. His real name is Curtis Metcalf, the Hardware Milestone character. That's how they're bringing in the other Milestone universe characters. And Icon and Rocket, while this is not in this particular issue, but in the larger narrative, they're aware of this Big Bang event. This is a huge event that sort of kicks off the Milestone universe. Is this BLM protest is where a lot of this. The formative creation of the Milestone universe takes place in this BLM movement. I hope that even though there's some politics in here, I hope it doesn't turn people off from this story. I didn't find the odd political reference in here. I didn't find it off-putting or anything like that. It made sense to me. This is a young kid, Virgil Hawkins. He's got a girl he's got a crush on, this Frida. He's got He's got a good sister named Sharon. His father always wanted to teach him karate, taught him. He got a green belt, but then he stopped his training when he was younger. And Virgil uses his training ultimately when Hot Streak attacks him at school, and then these two students end up using their powers that they just newly acquired at the Big Bang event, at the protest, and initially. Static gets the better of Hot Streak, and then Hot Streak at the end of the issue ends up ultimately getting the better of, or Hot Streak ends up essentially looks like almost burning down their homes. Artistically, I really was impressed with the art. In fact, who's the artist again, Jace?
Chris Cross. Does the layouts, and then
it's.
I think the colorist also did the finishes.
Yeah.
And he's somebody whose art that whose name I'm not familiar with.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought, because he does the colors as well. Nicholas Draper Ivy. And he did the that second cover.
Yeah.
The one where Hot Streak's kind of in the upper left. So he clearly has some rendering skills himself.
Yeah. No, but it's I really enjoy it. I mean, artistically, this issue is beautifully drawn. Like, it's I don't know how I get frustrated sometimes. I lack the language to adequately describe the coloring and the palette, but it just, I really liked I can't wait to see this in comic book form, how it feels on the page. But I mean, this looks beautiful digitally. I really like this style, and I like the way the colors sort of like pop off the page, even the individual shirts and and the coloring and even the hairstyles and just really good. I mean, I'm just really impressed with this. He's got a beautiful sister. He's got a good family life, good rapport. Uh, there's a little degree of family dysfunction there, but uh, even narratively, the way the issue starts off with almost like a DJ giving a talk about giving us the Coles Notes version of what's happened to sort of bring us up to speed. Touching base with what happened in the Milestone Returns uh, issue that came out a couple weeks ago. Again, I would recommend that people pick this up. I think it's even worth the $4.99 price tag on it. I'm going to be picking up the next few issues on this. I'm actually really impressed. I like the world building that's began with this, because this isn't this feels quite enjoyable. I'm really looking forward to Icon and Rocket, those issues, and Hardware coming out. I really like this, and I'm definitely in. I was actually fairly impressed, and I'm definitely in for the. This is probably Vito Ayala. I haven't really been impressed with a lot of the stuff she's written. This is probably the most impressed I've been with her work, in quite a while. But I don't know. What did you think of this? Can you see yourself becoming a Static fan or what?
Yeah, so first of all, we should say Vita is non-binary, so we should refer to them as they or them. Um,
Okay.
uh, but and the other part is, so I was a fan of the Milestone universe the first go round, and um, it's no surprise here that there's politics involved, because that was the whole point of Milestone the first time around, right? Was to bring representation to the kind of underrepresented in terms of the heroes that you see in comics, right? And so that's why most of the heroes in the original Milestone universe were persons of color, and that's why you see here that these heroes are going to be persons of color, and the creators creating them are going to be creators who are persons of color, because they're bringing their own real life experiences and what it means to be a minority in this world, in this society, and how that's affected them. I couldn't, not that I'm a comic creator, but I'm a white guy, a straight white guy. I live life on the easiest setting. Didn't ask for that, but that's just the reality. And I try to be as as much of an ally and aware and as open minded as I can. And these are stories that need to be told. Obviously, Static has been a pretty popular character, and I think the Static Shock, I always find myself referring to the character. The character is Static. Static Shock is the cartoon that really was the reason that everybody why Static is the most well known, and why it makes sense for Milestone Returns to launch with Static, because that was the name of the cartoon that really brought a higher profile to the character. So in terms of this actual story, it does have a lot in common with the original iteration. The original iteration, it was Virgil Hawkins, and he was go into this big brawl between a couple gangs, and the cops show up and they want to break up the gang fight, and they shoot tear gas, which had been, unbeknownst to the police, had been contaminated with this Q juice, which was sort of like the equivalent of the Dakotaverse equivalent of like the meta gene, right? To activate meta genes in people and give them powers. And they also referred to it as the Big Bang and Bang Babies and all that. So there's a lot of similarities here. Obviously, it's updated for modern times. This time it's a Black Lives Matter protest, and all of it is very much real. I think Vita does an incredible job of grounding this story in the sort of concerns and realism of what society is like today. I think they do a similar job in Children of X, which they're writing for Marvel, which is also absolutely fantastic. The other thing that I'll say is that, I know Vita personally, and, they bring a lot of their own experiences in terms of growing up in New York, and, what that means to be a person of color, and to have the heritage that they have, and having grown up and seen the prejudice and racism. And, we all know it still exists, as much as we wish it didn't, or maybe thought we were further along, and then the last 4 years have showed us otherwise. So despite the fact that I'm disappointed that Milestone didn't return sooner when it was first announced, I think it was 2016 at San Diego Comic-Con. I remember I was in the room when Reginald Hudland and Dennis Cowan, and I think that was it, came up on the stage. And they were saying, hey, yeah, we're going to bring back Milestone. And then there was issues of ownership and whatnot with Dwayne McDuffie's widow and making sure proper compensation and all the legal mess or whatever. But in a way, it might be a blessing in disguise to have it come back now, because I feel like a lot of the issues and the ideas and the things that can be explored are more in the forefront of people's minds. And this is a perfect example of the way you can start conversations. And what I love is all of that is the subtext, right? But what Vita does is they take that subtext and they don't hit you over head with it. They make sure that it remains subtext. And the story we get is about Virgil Hawkins and his family, and about the family dynamics, and about the interactions between Virgil and his sister and his parents and his friends at school, and all that struggle, which is very much similar to things that you can think back and place in their particular era, like The Amazing Spider-Man, and what was going on in the 60s with Peter Parker and him trying to get along, and the whole bookworm thing, and trying to make money and help support his aunt, and all that sort of idea, that whole kind of archetype of a young hero who's got all these responsibilities of being at that age and trying to discover who you are, on top of having superpowers, and just trying to juggle all those things. And it's what Static, the first series, did very well, and it's what this series has started out doing very, very well, not the least of which is contributed to by the art that Rocky mentioned. The crisscross layouts are fantastic. The Nicholas Draper Ivy colors and finishes are fantastic as well. There's a lot of montage pieces. There's a lot of scenes where the characters break the panels, which gives it sort of this cinematic feel. And I could easily see this, as an animated series or even live action. We may be putting the cart to the head of the horse here, but it's fantastic, right? It just feels so grounded and so real, and it pulls you in such a way that you kind of forget you're reading a comic, because the characters just feel so authentic. And I think that's where the issue shines the most. And I credit the entire collaborative team, both the words from Vita and the layouts and finishes from Chris Cross and Nicholas Draper. Animal Design does a great job with the letters. The whole issue is narrated by Virgil with these blue boxes and white lettering, and it all flows very, very well paced. It is a bit longer than a normal comic. Usually, 20 pages. You get 22 here. And then, of course, there's a couple of preview pages for Icon and Rocket and Hardware. So, yeah, I think if this is going to be the quality of the Milestone Returns books, then they're all going to be hits in my mind. I do agree with you, Rocky. For a debut issue, you would hope it would be a little less, maybe $1 less, because you really want as many people to grab hold of this as you can. Obviously, the regular covers are $3.99, but then those cardstock covers, they're adding $1, and that's yeah. But I think all the covers are fantastic. There's a couple incentive covers I saw too that I'm like, I might be able to see if I can swing one or two of those, because they're fantastic as well. So yeah, great debut. I mentioned right at the top, a couple great new number ones. That was one that I was referring to, obviously, along with Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow. All right, moving on, we have Batman Fortnite 0 Point number 5. This is written by Christos Gage, concept and story consultant Donald Mustard, art by Christian Duce, colors by John Kalis. I don't really have a whole lot to say here about this. It's fun, and it's good in as much as it's mixing these two worlds, but I do sort of feel like the story has, or the whole title really has lost a little bit of the momentum. We still don't have all the answers, but the mystery of what was going on early on felt like it was more fun. I don't know if the mystery for me has dragged on too long, or what. It doesn't have quite the same level of it just doesn't hook me the way that it did in the beginning. I will say we do get a revelation here of Deathstroke is the one that's been working with whomever all along. Not a surprise. We know Deathstroke is, has no loyalty whatsoever. So that's not a surprise at all that he's actually a traitor in their midst. I thought the action went over pretty well. I do feel like this is more wordy. I mean, we've had some issues where you could read it in like 3 minutes because Batman couldn't talk, and it was a lot of action with him fighting in the Fortnite world. And now it's like, hey, are we making up for lost time where everybody's talking all the time, saying something? So I don't know. I still enjoy it. I still think overall, when you sit down and read all 6 issues, it's going to be a fun story. But this just wasn't the best issue for me. It was just okay. It felt a little bit transitional. I'm very curious to get to the last issue to see what exactly has been going on because, as I said, Deathstroke turns out to be the traitor, and he betrays Batman and Catwoman in the worst sort of way, I guess, trapping them in this world they're in. And I guess we'll find out how it all shakes out next issue. So, yeah, for me, this was probably the weakest issue so far, but it might have just been, hey, maybe this series went on one issue longer than it should have. Maybe we didn't need so much of what we had here. Maybe we should have just had the conclusion or just had it paced out or the issues broken down differently. But I don't know, maybe you feel different, Rocky. Maybe you really enjoyed it. And again, I'm not saying it's bad. It just didn't rise to the level. Like I thought the first 2 or 3 issues were fantastic. And it just feels like ever since Batman had the ability to talk, it feels like the story's bogged down a little bit. So I don't know. What do you think?
Well, it feels like we're at part 5 here. So this is actually, we're getting every single issue to the credit of writer Christos Cage and the art. I mean, the artist here is Christian Duce. It's been fantastic. It's been action packed, and I actually got to say that even though it's been action packed, there's actually been some story here, and there's been I was impressed with the actual detective work, and I thought Batman actually had some workable detective work that you could follow along with and be impressed with. So I was impressed by Christos Cage put that together. And there's actually Christos Cage. Batman does a lot of detective work here in this issue as well. The dialogue here really works well. And the dialogue and the interplay between these very different characters is actually quite workable. And, one thing about this is that this is a fast read in a way. I enjoyed, even though there's a lot of dialogue, it reads quick. And because it's always action packed from issue to issue, from page to page, it's moving briskly, and I enjoy it for that reason. I do think that it should probably it should have ended this issue. However, I will say this at the end. Spoiler alert! Surprise, surprise! We give spoilers here. At the end, Batman and Selina, of course, manage to make it so that all the people escape 0 Point, which is where they're at. And of course, Deathstroke sabotages things, so he escapes, and the issue ends with Batman and Selina being trapped at 0 Point with seemingly no way to escape to their own world, because it's basically discovered that Batman figures out that that everybody has a different vibrational frequency that matches the world or universe where they're from. And for people who love DC Crisis history, you know that we all vibrate at a different vibrational frequency depending on what Earth we're from, and so as long as you match the frequency of your world, you can travel to that world. That's the Coles Notes version. And so they, utilizing that through the science that they discover, Batman helps all his compatriots go back to their own world. Unfortunately, at the end, Batman and Selina Kyle are trapped, and Catwoman are trapped at 0 Point. Now, normally I would think I wouldn't be inclined to get a final issue because it's like this is dragged on. But I really like the character work. I think it was in issue 1 where Batman, there was a lot of good character work. It was an all silent issue, but you could tell as Batman and Catwoman, even though they didn't remember each other, they kind of felt, they remembered, they knew they had feelings for each other. And there's actually good character work here regarding Batman and Catwoman. And I'm actually interested to see what Christos Cage does with that in the final issue. Now that Batman and Catwoman, with their memories intact, are we going to get some really good character moments? And because this is not necessarily in continuity, maybe it is. I mean, it's the Omniverse now, so who knows, right? I'm wondering if Christos Cage is going to maybe push some boundaries, and maybe we'll have a good Batman Catwoman story for issue 6. So overall, it could have ended here, and I would have been perfectly fine. But because I'm interested to see what he has to say, some interesting character moments to expect for characters in issue 6, my fingers are crossed that the final issue here will hit it out of the park. And besides, we need another issue anyway, so people can get their extra. What do you get? If you're into Fortnite, you need to get the codes, right, to get that, to complete the Harley Quinn character. So
yep, that's right.
There you go. But yeah, no, I didn't mind it.
Yeah, I think maybe I'll judge issue 5 a little more generously after I get issue 6 and see how it all plays out in the end. So, all right, on to the last book. We're going to talk about Superman Red Blue. What are we on? Issue number 4 here. So we have several stories in this Superman. And here's the thing. Like I was talking to somebody on social media about this the other day. These limited color palette stories, I think we really need to give them a rest for a while. Their argument was, I think the format can work, but I just, it's not new or innovative anymore. Do the Batman black and white, or the Carnage, red and black, or Harley red, black, and white, or whatever it was, and now the Superman Red Blue. Purposely choosing to limit it doesn't do the artist any favors necessarily. And being that they're shorter stories, some characters, who the characters are, sort of lend themselves to shorter stories, and some don't. And I really do feel, as much as I love Superman, this Superman Red and Blue, it has been the least successful, I feel like, of these types of stories. Because what else have we had? It started with Batman Black and White. Yeah. We've had the Carnage Red and Black. We've had Wolverine Red, Black, and Blood.
We're getting the Wonder Woman Gold and Black next week.
Yeah,
so.
Wonder Woman is coming out with one, and it's just like, for a character that's as hard to write as Superman, and I get it. Like that's a whole argument. Some people think he's hard to write. Some people think he's not. He's too much of a Boy Scout. He's too boring, or whatever. It's a discussion for another time. But the fact of the matter is that some people don't understand the character, and they have a harder time. And so I think he's a character that it's much tougher for the average writer to give us a good Superman story in such a limited amount of space. And then when you're also limiting the artist and how they can bring emotion to the story because of the limited color palette, I think you're really putting yourself behind the 8 ball. So unfortunately, I think this has been, in a word, it's been kind of boring, honestly, because you're hitting a lot of the same notes. Like if you're going to tell a Superman story, 8-page Superman story, well, the easiest thing to do is just concentrate on the fact he's a symbol of hope. And we just keep getting that over and over and over. So it's been a little rough. So anyway, in this particular issue, we get a story called Nam Reapus, which is Superman written backwards. That's written by Mark Waid with art by Audrey Muck, colors by Jordi Belair, lettered by Dave Sharp. We get Prospect of Tomorrow, which is written and illustrated by Francis Manupal, lettered by Dave Sharp. A Little is a Lot, which is written by Robert Venditti, art by Aletha Martinez, colored by Emilio Lopez, lettered by Dave Sharp. For the Man Who Has Nothing, written by Michael W. Conrad, art by Cully Hamner, lettered by Pat Brousseau. And then finally, #SavebySuperman, written by Rich Douek, art by Joe Quinones, lettered by Dave Sharp. So the first one is basically a Mxyzptlk story where things are sort of flipped around. Usually it's Mxyzptlk showing up in our dimension. Superman has to trick him into saying his name backwards to get him to go back in his dimension. Well, Superman shows up in the 5th dimension here to sort of teach Mxyzptlk a lesson. And Mxyzptlk thinks that he's going to have to get Superman to say his name backwards. But it turns out what he really needs to do is you get Superman to say his true name, which is Clark Kent, backwards. Obviously, he doesn't know the true name, so he fails. He spends the entire story trying to get Superman to say Superman backwards in alphabet soup, in an eye exam, in a classroom. Um, so yeah, it's pretty interesting and fun. And for lack of a better way to describe the art, it looks like it belongs in a greeting card, especially the colors,
Yeah.
which sort of works.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I ultimately ended up thinking, what was the point of the story? It felt, I mean, it's Mark Waid, you know?
Yeah.
If anybody can give me a good 8-page Superman story, it should be Mark Waid. But it just, it felt sort of pointless. So I don't know. I wasn't a big fan of it. What did you think, Rocky?
Uh, I didn't mind this. I could understand Mark Waid writing this. He likes Mixiez Patelik, Mixiez Pitalik, however you want to say his name. I've heard it pronounced both ways, but uh, this was actually, it was actually kind of funny. You know, I mean, this was humorous. I've kudos to Mark Waid. I'd never thought of Superman wanting to get one up on Mixiez Pitalik, to go to his dimension, to be as annoying to him as Mixiez Pitalik usually is to him when he comes to his dimension. And just as a way, Superman's basically trying to make the point, look, you see how annoying I am? I mean, you know, you're as annoying, you know, maybe stay here, enjoy your life, you know? And it's kind of funny, the subplot going on behind the scenes is Mixiez Pitalik wants to woo this woman that he's in love with. And ultimately, Superman basically leaves of his own accord because he realizes that, you know, reasoning with Mixiez Pitalik isn't going to work. So he leaves, and then it ends up that Superman actually did Mixiez Pitalik a favor by explaining to the woman he loves that you know, that basically that, you know, Mixiez Pitalik is really a good guy, and then, you know, he put in a good word for him basically, but you know, that only makes things more frustrating for Mixiez Pitalik, because he's really, really upset because he can't even you know, that his own girlfriend now thinks that Superman's a nice guy, and that just drives him crazy. And so it's kind of funny. I mean, Mark Waid, I think, understands something that at least I've always thought of Mixiez Pitalik as kind of a joke character, and I've always thought that treating him to be like a really serious character is sometimes kind of a mistake. I think of Mixiez Pitalik along the lines of Batmite. You know, he shouldn't be taken too seriously. But you know, people can disagree with me on that. I know that he's from the 6th dimension now, along with Batmite, when in the pages of Scott Snyder's Justice League, you know, a couple years ago. But you know, I like this more fun, sort of like Silver Age type of Mixiez Pitalik. So kudos to Mark Waid. This was not my favorite in the issue, but it was a fun read.
Yeah, it sounded like you enjoyed it a little more than me. But all right, moving on. So the next one actually has the best art in the whole book, I think. Prospect of Tomorrow, Francis Manupal. But really, it ends up being a sort of a Bizarro story in a way. And it is interesting in the story structure of what we think it is and then what it turns out to be. But ultimately, again, I just end up wondering, okay, what was the point of this? Like, it didn't break new ground. I don't know. Despite the fantastic art, it left no impact on me. Maybe the least memorable of all the stories, to the point where I don't really have much to say about it. Like, okay, so Superman basically, there's some signal coming from space, and Star Labs tells Superman about it, and he flies out there and rescues Bizarro. That's the whole story.
Yep.
Like, what?
That's it.
Yeah. Like, what was the point? Again, I think this is a perfect example of the kind of the failure of Superman Red Blue. I understand that every writer is like, well, I can't write a story about how Superman's a symbol of hope because that's what everybody else is doing. But what else can you do with the character in 8 pages? And it requires a really interesting way of looking at the character, or a deeper understanding of Superman. And I think a lot of these creators maybe just don't have that,
Yeah.
or it's just that hard. And I'm not saying it's easy by any stretch of the imagination, because it's not like I could say, oh, I've got 100 ideas for a quick 8-page Superman story. I don't. But fantastic art. That's what I'll say about
Oh
this.
yeah, gorgeous art, and I think visually alone, this is, honestly, that in fairness, a lot of this stuff is just to get to see some of this art. It's worth it, even if the story might be very simplistic and might be an uneventful. This is basically Superman just coming to the rescue story. Nothing, it's really, it doesn't even have a message really. It's just about helping Bizarro, but it is so beautifully rendered. I mean, this is absolutely gorgeous art, and it's just Superman helping Bizarro, and it's there you go. It's so yeah, it's visually it's really good, but hey, I mean, the artist. This is
Francis Manupal.
Francis Manupal. So he doesn't normally write, does he? But I mean, he doesn't write very often, does he? When's the last thing he?
Well, no. I mean, he was the artist and co-writer on Flash when they relaunched it with New 52.
Oh, he was co-writer. Okay.
Yeah, and then in Rebirth, he had the Trinity series that he wrote and did the art for.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, he's definitely a storyteller. But no, I mean, it's not like that's not his first. It's not how he broke in or anything like that. So
yeah.
The next story. Oh, are you done talking about that one?
Certainly. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So the next one, A Little Is a Lot by Robert Venditti, art by Letha Martinez. This is probably my favorite. And it shows that, first of all, Superman is Robert Venditti's favorite character. So, again, that probably helps out, right? Like what I was just talking about. Some of these creators maybe don't have a great understanding of Superman. Robert Venditti clearly does. And instead of telling a story about Superman as a symbol of hope or missing the mark completely, he tells a story of Clark Kent and Pa Kent, and how the little lessons that Pa taught Clark as he was growing up in Smallville translated and made him the hero that he is. Reading this story, and this is a relatively quick read in terms of how much actual dialogue there is or narration. We get several pages where there's not a single word on the page, as Superman basically holds up an overpass that has collapsed, so that people can't escape. And you can tell that he's struggling with the weight of the cars and whatnot that are on the overpass, to allow people to not only escape but grab their belongings, grab their dog, grab whatever. And it all goes to a little is a lot, and it's mirrored by this lesson that Pa Kent taught when he, even though they had a poor crop of hay, they were sharing some of what they had with a neighbor who had an even worse time. And Clark saying, well, what good is us taking this little bit to them going to help? Well, if everybody gives a little, if everybody comes together and gives a little, it ends up being a lot, right? And so as Superman is holding up this overpass, not only is he doing what he can, you see other people that are helping those trapped in the cars, other citizens coming to the rescue. Because if everybody contributes a little, it adds up to a lot, right? And so that's the lesson. And it does go to show, despite me saying that for the most part, Superman Red and Blue, I feel like hasn't been successful as a title. This is sort of proving me wrong. But again, it takes somebody who really understands the character. So this is maybe my favorite story of all the Superman Red Blue stories that we've had so far. I mean, I don't remember all of them off the top of my head, so I can't say 100%, but I'm sure it's in my top 2 or 3, if not number 1. But again, it goes to show that if you have a creator who understands the character really well, you can tell a good Superman story in a very limited amount of time with very little dialogue, actually. And this, it just makes me wish that instead of Philip Kennedy Johnson, we had Robert Venditti writing Superman, or Action Comics, I guess you'd say. I mean, I yet to see what Tom Taylor's going to do. We know it's going to be John Kent, so we'll see. Luckily, we do have Robert Venditti writing the Superman 78 series. That's sort of the continuation of the Superman the movie, starring Christopher Reeve. So I thought it was great. Plus, the artwork is really good. Both in the flashback sequence, where the art is a much lighter palette with the red and the blue. It's not real heavy, as opposed to the current or present day. The colors are a bit more strong. They're a bit more vibrant. But I feel like the color work here, they really leaned into it. Emilio Lopez really leaned into it and used the colors rather than sort of shying away from them or using a lot of white negative space or whatnot. He really leaned into using the red and the blue against each other. The blue is the shadow, the red as the light source, and like more so than a lot of other people did. That almost like they shied away from using it. He leaned into it heavily, and I think it worked really, really well. So, yeah, by far my favorite story in the whole book.
Yeah, well, just like the Mark Waid story before had the message of go and try to reason with your enemies. Superman tries to reason with them. Mick says Pitalik. Here, basically, the Superman remembers a message from his dad. Have faith in people, Clark, and if you ever find yourself starting to doubt them, be the example they need. And that's what Superman does here. And there's that old expression, show, don't tell. And frankly, even without the dialogue here, you could get that. Superman shows by example here. He's holding up the bridge, and people are doing their little bit. There's that old, very, very depressing expression, death by 1,000 cuts. Well, there's also life by 1,000 bits of help, I mean, little bits of help here and there, all those people helping Superman prop up the bridge, taking their time. It takes a long time for them to get all the pieces of steel to hold them up there, to push them up there, each human trying to help this Kryptonian. But they slowly do it, and they all come together and they help, and it's a nice message. And it's all in the artwork, the beautiful artwork, which you beautifully described. And yeah, it works. It works. And again, curiously enough, I did enjoy this story, but my favorite story is in fact the last one, which
There's two left.
There's two left, so it's not this. It's not this next one, which is, I'm not even sure what this next one is. But I don't know what the hell this
story.
Is.
Yeah, another Bizarro story that I really didn't understand.
Yeah.
So I mean, basically, he thinks everybody's making fun of him. Everybody being members of the Justice League, are making fun of him, and then at the end, as he busts out of his fortress of multitude, Superman is there to give him a cupcake, and wish him a happy birthday. And apparently the whole time, everything he was seeing was all a manipulation, a mirage by Mixes Pitalik. But I don't know, Rocky. I really don't know.
Yeah,
I was confused by it, and
I'm not straight up. I guess it's just me. I've never been a Bizarro fan, to be honest.
Same. Yeah.
I've never really been a big fan. I always think that he's sort of a product of the Silver Age. That I'm all for updating characters from the Silver Age, I guess, but that was one you could probably leave behind. But although I do like Bizarro in the Red Hood and the Outlaws, when with sort of a more intelligent Bizarro with Artemis and Red Hood, I thought that was pretty cool. I actually like that. I'm not really into this whole Bizarro having a square planet and having his own world and everything is opposite. It just gets into kind of tropey nonsense after a while. But yeah, I don't really get this. I guess it has, for the man who has nothing, interesting, written by Michael W. Conrad. Michael W. Conrad is co-writing Wonder Woman with Becky Cloonan, and I think they did a reasonably good job with Wonder Woman. For the man who has nothing, that the title I think is a play on For the Man Who Has Everything, which is a very famous Dave Gibbons or Alan Moore story, illustrated by Dave Gibbons, and where dealing with the Black Mercy, where Superman, is infected with this plant that makes him imagine himself having a better life when Krypton didn't explode. And so if this title is a play on that, For the Man Who Has Nothing, does Bizzaro think he has nothing? And I think maybe that's what Bizzaro is thinking, that maybe he doesn't have anything, but Superman is letting him know with a cupcake that apparently that's not true. I don't really know.
Yeah. Again, I think, I say, what the heck is this? But I mean, this is another one of those. Okay, so Superman is the symbol of hope, and even if you think you have nothing and no one cares about you, Superman cares. But it's just, I mean, it's so long-winded to get there, that it was a little bit of a chore. So yeah.
Anyway, well, this final story.
But the last one by Rich Douek with Joe Quinones art, Dave Sharp on letters, apparently was your favorite, right?
Well, yeah. The reason why this is my favorite is that I actually think that this is a very timely story, and I can see kids being stupid enough in our world to deliberately jump off buildings to get Superman's attention and then take a selfie of it, confident that Superman will catch them. And of course, Superman will, because Superman is Superman. And it starts a very, very dangerous trend here where other kids start to do it. And this kid is an idiot. But he's just, he's an egomaniac. He's a YouTuber, and I think he's sort of like, I don't think this kid intends to be as necessarily as egocentric or as driven for attention as maybe he's initially portrayed to be. But what really stands out here is the way Superman handles this kid, and that's what really impressed me about it, where Superman's character stood out. The art here is very well done. While Superman is battling the real villains and protecting people from the likes of Solomon Grundy and from Lex Luthor and what have you, it ends up that this kid keeps distracting him, and finally he's got to take this kid and say, "Look, man, I can't." He says there are 11 million people down there every day. I do my best to save each and every one that needs me to. And, he's basically just asking the kid, like, please don't do this. Don't do this. And it ends with him taking a selfie with a young kid on the street. So Superman is saying, look, instead of me wasting my time saving you, when you're deliberately putting yourself in harm's way, I could be saving other people. And Superman is just using conversation, and he's asking and he's being kind, whereas he could be angry. He could, Batman would be treated very differently if it was another type of hero or anti-hero. I mean, that kid probably, let a couple kids fall to their death, and that would be the end of that trend. But that's not Superman. And anyways, I just really like this. I really loved it. I love the ending. I love that final panel. Superman just being somebody who the people of Metropolis love him, but sometimes that means they take advantage of him. And this kid decides, I think it's fair to say he decides not to. And it ends with a beautiful selfie. And I don't know, I just sort of tugged at the heart a little bit. It really felt like Superman to me a little bit more than the rest of the other stories did.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's all too real. Hashtag Superman challenge. You could totally see people doing this, because it's not just the first guy that does it. Then he's got a bunch of copycats, Fly Guy Fry and Bonnie Riz and whatnot. And Superman has better things to do, and it's all portrayed very well in the artwork by Joe Quinones. You can see when Superman has to take the time to go rescue these other fools. And take time out from fighting the Atomic Skull and Brainiac, and Lex Luthor and whatever, whenever they're taking selfies with him, he's got this look on his face like
Yeah.
he's not happy that he's having to do that, as opposed to when he takes the picture at the end with the little girl that, just comes up and asks for a selfie. He's got a big smile on his face. So yeah, this was one of the better stories. And of course, Joe Quinones is a fantastic artist. So that was a good one. So that does it. The only other DC book that comes out this week is Scooby-Doo. So we basically covered everything this week, unlike some other weeks where we had to skip this or that. So that's it for the books this week. Everything Catwoman stood out. Nightwing was very good. Static, very good. Supergirl, very good. I think overall, really strong week. Anything you got coming up this week, Rocky, that you want to plug before we call it good?
Not particular. I might do a top 20 of just some of my back issues, my DC back issues. But beyond that, I might do a little bit of introspection on Wonder Woman. But I got nothing very specific. No, I'm just I'm just taking it easy, enjoying the summer. But I know you've been busy. You got a lot on the go lately, haven't you?
Oh my God, I've been so busy. Being out of town for the day job last week really threw me, trying to get caught up. So we've got, I owe everybody a couple of Star Wars War of the Bounty Hunters episodes that should be dropping this week. I also have an interview with Tim Seeley about Dark Red, his Animosity series that had a couple of arcs, a couple of volumes. And he talks about his other current work that's coming out. So that should be out. Actually should be out by the time you hear this. It should have dropped the day before. So that's coming as well. And then there should be another interview with a Bad Idea creator coming for you all. That should be really fun. As you know, if you follow social media, Bad Idea is coming to an end. So they have what's known as the Final Five Bad Idea issues. You got to pre-order them blind on the 16th to get a special sticker. What the sticker's for, much like the buttons, we don't know, but apparently you'll want it. And then on the following day, on the 17th, I think they're announcing what those final 5 titles are. So I guess we'll have to wait and see. So that's coming down the pipe as well. We also should be getting that DC Pride spotlight out for you guys this week. At some point, Far Sector, as I mentioned, should be coming. As I'm looking at my list here. And I think that's all I can announce for now, but we do have some other really big things we're working on. It's just, like I said, being out of town last week, I got a lot of stuff to catch up on this week. In fact, I don't even have a Kickstarter spotlight this week. I don't, as of now, when we're recording this, I don't. Whether or not I get one in the next couple of days and can record it is another question, so I guess we'll wait and see. But there's tons of great Kickstarters going on right now. Game of Doubles, which we spotlighted last week, is one that I'll call out in particular, but there's tons of great crowdfunding campaigns going on right now. Slow City Blues over at the new sort of concierge crowdfunding site, zoop.gg, is also very much worth your time. Really encourage you to go over and check that out. Listen to my interview with zoop.gg CEO, Jordan Plosky. Also go and check out the episode I did with the creative team for Slow City Blues, which is a fantastic sounding series. And I did get to read the first issue. It's very much worth your time. So tons of content coming out as always. We're hoping to get the X-Men episodes started back up. I know people have been asking for those. Just a matter of having enough time. And of course, got to work that day job and pay the bills. So yeah.
I do. I should say that next week for DC is going to be quite big. Checkmate #1 is coming out. And as well as Infinite Frontier #1 and the premiere issue of Wonder Woman Black and Gold. And it's going to be a huge week. Teen Titans Academy 4, Harley Quinn 4, Action Comics 1032, third issue of Robin, Mr. Miracle, The Source of Freedom #2, Superman 32, Justice League 60, Batman Reptilian #1, all coming out next week. So wow, it's going to be a huge DC week next week, Jay. So we're definitely gonna, that might be a 3-hour podcast.
Yeah, we got the next issue of Wonder Woman, which starts a new arc, and yeah, it's gonna be that Batman Reptilian. We're gonna have to spend quite a bit of time on. So yeah, gonna be a big one, everybody. So make sure you're ready. In the meantime, make sure you've subscribed to Rocky's Comic Boom YouTube channel. Hit that like button. Make sure you click that notification bell so you know when he's got new content up. If you're listening on just the audio, be sure you go over to YouTube and check it out. Conversely, if you are just watching us on YouTube, make sure you go to whatever your favorite podcast platform is and subscribe to the Comic Source, because we do tons of episodes, almost one a day. Sometimes, well, at our peak, we were more than one a day. I'd like to get back there to doing 10 episodes a week, but just struggling to find the time. But we appreciate your support, however often you watch or join us. We always appreciate the comments and reaching out on social media to let us know what you think. So that's going to do it for this episode, everybody. Really appreciate you watching or listening as always, and we'll talk to you next time.
See you later.